And so my background, I built my first model for Home Depot and UPS back in '03. I was in a PhD program at Virginia Tech in industrial organizational psychology, and was recruited out by Sports Authority as a data scientist to try to help save them right before they went bankrupt. And so I did all like the marketing analytics, customer segmentation, et cetera. Went to Dish, was responsible for $10 billion allocation of spend for the FCC Spectrum auction for the CEO, and then ended up starting my own data science consulting firm. My firm, I was fortunate enough that NVIDIA had seen me do a keynote about 8 years ago now, and they asked if I would join as one of their 7 service delivery consulting partners worldwide for them. And so was fortunate enough to do that for a few years, running a great team. And then they asked if I would join the VAR solution integrator side. I told them I don't know what the hell that is, and they're like, "Well, just look into it." So if you have no idea what it is as well, VAR solution integrator are like the hardware resellers, software resellers, and have consulting services built in as well, right? So you can offer end-to-end solutions depending on a customer's maturity. And so I was responsible for building out the AI deep learning high performance compute practices at a $2 billion and a $20 billion company over the past 7, 8 years. Ended up being number 1 and number 3 globally in sales with NVIDIA, top 5 with Dell, HPE, Cisco, NetApp, up there with like DataRobot, Converge.io, Dataiku, et cetera. And I was making sales reps really rich, but didn't feel like I was contributing to society. So I had taken a CDO role at a Goldman Sachs funded Series B, about to be Series C, and we were doing a lot with we'll say next best action recommendations, but also getting a lot into the large language model space, right? Because we were a SaaS sales platform, it provided a lot of sales coaching, both in real time feedback or things like this, where it might say you're monologuing too long or you're talking too fast, all the way through like summarizing conversations and within a conversation as well as across a customer to really understand like where are they going, where are their pain points, where's the friction, right, in regards to that. And so and I had done NLP as well starting in 2011. So language had always fascinated me because I came from psychology and sociology. And so really being able to hone in on the importance of language means this advent was a really, really exciting time, right? And so I thought with what I'm doing now, which I started a new advisory consulting firm in June. And my focus really is combining that org psychology with the data science and advanced analytics space, right? Because with so many projects having failed over the years, not just within myself, right, but seeing that over and over again at Fortune 500 companies and even like growth and mid-market companies, what was the reason, right? Because when I started in like 2011, it was because we didn't really have the technology, right, to leverage, right, or the right ways to flow from a data engineer to a data scientist and having to refactor code and all that. But now, if we're still seeing near the same failure rates, then it's really a function of buy-in and processes, right? If it's a people problem at this point. And so how do we fix that people problem? And it's largely driven by the stakeholders, right? So that's why I wanted to frame this talk in that way of what the heck does this look like, right? Because even if you're a junior data scientist or data engineer, much less a senior or a manager in the space, being able to communicate at the right level and talk about business impact are huge ways to drive change and innovation and get what you want within your organization, as opposed to being like Harry Potter in a broom closet, right? And being told you're allowed to come out once a day. So with that, you guys have probably already seen a lot of these stats. So just real quick reading them because I hate text slides. McKinsey estimates AI could deliver 13 trillion in additional GDP by 2030. Accenture says similar, AI could boost profitability by 38%, economic boost of 14 trillion by 2035. And Bloomberg has suggested that CAGR growth rate of 42% over the next 10 years, looking like 40 billion last year to 1.3 trillion 10 years from now, right? So if Gen AI is expanding this so much in regards to GDP, CAGR, et cetera. We know it's critically important, right? We've reached an apex point where AI is not going away. We've had 2 AI winters, and it's not going to happen again, uh, fortunately, right? The question is why? Why is this different than when machine learning started taking off or when deep learning started taking off around 2015? And the reason why really is these large language models. And but why was it that large language models took off, right? Because we've had these for a decent amount of time. But this really took off last December. And the reason it took off was because OpenAI released a UI that was easy to use for the masses, right? A simple Google search to get the data outputs you want. But the problem with that is that because language models or LLMs um, were brought to the masses, it meant that it was being driven by the masses. It was being driven by leadership, by CEOs, by VCs saying, we need a generative AI strategy. It wasn't being driven by technologists, right? Who had all the caveats that exist in regards to machine hallucinations and the problems within the LLM space. So before I go on into that, let's talk about a who's a what's it moneymaker. So I'm a sales rep and I come to your CEO and I say, Mr. CEO, we have the greatest device known to man. It's a who's a what's it moneymaker. CEO says, what does it do? Sales rep says, anything, everything. Says whatever you want. He goes, oh, okay, well, how does it work? I don't know how it works, but your competitors have it. Everyone is talking about it. You need it. Do you want to get left behind? Or do you want a who's a what's it moneymaker? CEO says, well, damn, I guess we need it. Uh, what do we do with it? How do we implement it? Don't worry about it. You'll figure it out. That is generative AI, right? Being driven by business and saying that Gen AI is directly correlated to profits. If you've never seen South Park, or especially the Underpants Gnome episode, they have a great PowerPoint presentation in there. And it talks about the gap, right, between, not in South Park's case, but the gap between some product and profitability. If we don't know what the heck that is, it's hyper problematic, right? Now, you as technologists, you understand what LLMs can do, what they can't do, where their downfalls are, where the gaps are today. But leadership doesn't, because they know what an LLM stands for, maybe. And they've certainly read a ton of articles on generative AI, but they don't know how it operates. They don't know the pitfalls and downfalls. And so how the heck are they going to connect a who's a what's it moneymaker to profitability? They can't, right? It has to be driven by those who understand it, understand what we can do and when. And so we really thought tech was the hardest part of AI transformation. Reality is it's not. It's people, it's adaptability. And Bain's study said the same thing, right? 63% of executives are citing adoption, change management, top barrier to successfully scaling AI initiatives within the organization. It's why I went in 2015 from a data science consulting firm to AI advisory, right? Because orgs need data strategy, they need AI strategy, they need education, they need roadmaps, they need alignment on use cases and the ROI associated with those use cases. And they need change management, right? To trust data, to trust AI, to understand what the capabilities are in the space and what's not capable. And earlier I mentioned 80% of projects failing. HBR says about 90%, right? You figured it would have gotten better. We talk about all AI projects, right? With the auto MLs of the world that exist and ML ops tooling, but it's not. We have to have business buy-in for AI success. We need leadership support early. We don't just go build a model or take an open source LLM and feed a bunch of data in and hope people will use it. You have to start with your customer personas first, whether that's an external customer or your internal stakeholders. How are they going to use generative AI? How are they going to use LLMs within your organization? And then the really, really, really critical important piece is communicating the business value in their language, not ours. And what does that look like process wise, right? Three things. I have another step model later, right? But who has authority? Who has interest? Who has budget to approve an initiative and to support it, to be a stakeholder, to be a AI champion, right? That second piece that I said is so important. If you are a consultant or you've ever thought about it, don't ever talk in regards to model accuracy. The night and day difference between saying, I can build a data science model that improves operational efficiency and it's 86% accurate versus we can build an AI model that reduces cost by 30 million per year. What do you think an executive cares about? Nobody cares about data process efficiencies, data pipelines, data architecture, data science, model accuracy. We do. Leadership does not. Even a CDO does not. It's about truly communicating value in their language that helps make their jobs easier, their jobs better, make them look better. And they're going to have concerns, right? Because majority of executives today don't really understand data science. They don't understand AI. They certainly don't understand LLMs and Gen AI, right? Maturity will grow over time. But if you look at a maturity framework, and I've built one in the past, right? Ran CIO and CDO roundtables. When I asked them on a 1 to 5 point scale, 1 being like no data scientist or 1 or 2, no models in production, through a level 5, fully data driven organization, the majority of Fortune 500, the majority of Fortune 100 execs said they were a 1 or a 2, right? They don't feel that they're mature enough in this space, but they want to be. And so being able to address apprehensions, concerns, even education, right, is critically important. What are the personas that can prevent adoption for Gen AI, right? Not just data science in general, although this can still apply, but Gen AI has its own unique challenges, right? So there's essentially 3 to 5 lines of business, right? CFO could be included in here, and it doesn't have to be C-suite, right? A director, a VP, an SVP, they can kibosh, they can quash anything that you want to do. And so relationship building is really, really important. As introverted as a lot of data engineers and data scientists are, the more that you build relationships, the more that you're trusted, the greater the opportunities you have to do something meaningful within your organization. So where do each of these stand today, right? So a CEO, they are getting board pressure nonstop, right? If you're a series funded, VC pressure. If you're private equity owned, PE pressure, right? If you're Fortune 500, the actual board of directors. To have a generative AI strategy, which sounds silly, dumb as hell, because Gen AI is a tool, it's a methodology, right? Large language models do not solve all problems. It's like blockchain didn't. But people don't know, people don't understand that today, right? And so problematically, we're shooting in the dark, right, of a Gen AI strategy. But it also opens up doors to opportunity, right? Because there's a huge initiative, a huge incentive for organizations to have a Gen AI strategy, which the reality is that that could include dashboarding, that could include linear regression, that can include machine learning, deep learning. It can be NLP, LLMs, transformers, whatever the heck it is, right? But they don't care because they're concerned about business impact. But Gen AI is a nomenclature. Gen AI strategy is a nomenclature. But there's a huge, huge opportunity to drive this because CEOs know they have to have one, and you can help be in the driver's seat to support them. The second one, which is a lot harder if you're internal, right, is trust and understanding. CEOs are reading on Gen AI, right? But not technologists, generally speaking, if you look holistically. And people don't buy or do things that they don't understand or trust. And so if they don't trust and understand, they're not going to move forward, right? So what they need, obviously, is education. The problem is if you're an IC, it's a little bit hard to have the ability to educate a CEO without creating friction, right? So there can be advantages to bringing in like external consultants or executive training, right? Workshops, just education on what Gen AI is, what it can do. CEOs can easily be in your corner because it's so important for them to have Gen AI. CIO and CISOs, on the other hand, it becomes a little more problematic, right? Because they still care about the traditional things of privacy, security, with LLMs, especially how they were built, the IP, right, of those, both in regards to do you still own it, if you've done anything with it, as well as will the LLM you built on still exist if it was built on proprietary data and not open source. What ends up being really, really important and what helps drive success is bringing the CIOs and CISOs in, right? They know this is transformative. They know they need it. They're generally risk averse personas. And so being able to collaborate with them and to ensure that the concerns are addressed and handled in parallel to, let's say, you building a custom LLM, really, really valuable, right? Now, there's going to be the other concerns, right? Not from the data engineering, data science side, but companies wanting to use things like ChatGPT, where you have companies like Samsung getting in a lot of trouble for just putting regular data out there, right? So there's an additional concern by especially the CISOs of what data is being accessed, what's being pushed out, what do others have access to, and so that ends up being a bigger concern. Obviously, OpenAI has a backend API. Personally, I still have concerns on how it was built and if anything will happen to them in the long term. But there is that component, right, of trying to protect private data, secure data. And then the last, which are kind of an antithesis to the CIO and CISO type, are the CDOs and CTOs. So CDOs can still be risk averse. There's two types of personas: those who are like trying to own and manage data and the pipelines associated with it, and then the CDO types and CTOs that are trying to be transformative, right? How do we do something more meaningful? Let's buy GPUs. Let's go to Hugging Face and pull down a model and then custom train it, right? Which means that because it's transformative in nature, there's hardware constraints and cost, right? And so starting with small opportunities, small wins can be really, really valuable, right? You don't need to buy $15 million worth of GPUs to leverage an open source model. And CDOs especially have a huge need for wins, right? And wins being ROI, right? Not being a new data lake or similar stood up, because CDOs generally have a 18-month window to prove themselves before they're let go, which is often not enough time to do much of anything, right? And so, how do you help them generate small wins, proof of value, ROI? And then they're going to care about some of the same things we care about, right? Accuracy, fairness, explainability of these models, right? Because people are going to ultimately ask, like, and while we might not share how this was trained or what was integrated with it, being able to showcase in a way that this is trusted is really, really important, right? And the last thing on there too is that when you're looking at use cases, as you know, machine hallucinations, I'm sure will go away over the next 3 to 9 months. But that's not a risk you want to take or put on them, right? Because if you're doing sales forecasting and it drastically mispredicts or showcases that as an output, then a CRO looks really bad. And if your chief revenue officer looks really bad and the CEO looks bad. So it's really, really important that the use cases focus on things that can help with like job augmentation, right? Or I don't want to say replacement, but even replacement, right? Like customer call centers, the level one call center reps, right? They can leverage these tools to either do their jobs more effectively, or as some organizations will do, they'll automate out some of those roles. And then, this kind of aligns both with the CIO and CDO and CISO personas, but it's what I think data scientists, data engineers care about as we look forward, right? Model fairness, who owns the IP, what's the privacy and security look like, what's the explainability of these models, what's reliability. So the C-suite doesn't all care about all of these, right? They care about some components of these, some don't care about any of them. But it's things that from the back end, I think we'll be continuously iterating on to improve reliability, to improve explainability. Goodness knows that security and privacy are going to be front and center for any enterprise company looking to actually use LLMs enterprise wide. And so, an implementation path to success, right? The way that I generally approach projects, the way that I suggest it, because acting as a consultant internally to your organization is about getting buy-in, right? And about getting wins. And so if you look organization wide, not even just to the one or two, three groups you might support, where are the business cases that generative AI and LLMs can really, really apply, really impact stakeholders? And if you don't know that, then talking with marketing, talking with operations, talking with product, talking with every group on what are their business challenges today, what's eating up their time, what's eating up their cost, where are they missing out on profitability? And then going back and doing ROI assessments on those use cases to figure out, where do you start? How long are each of those going to take? Do you have the data today to do so? Then developing a strategy and roadmap, right? Where are the gaps today? Do you have the right infrastructure? Do you have the right people? Do you have a strategy? Do you have the use cases? Then it's about generating wins, right? There's the long-term goal initiatives. You think of it as a child on a leash at Disney World, right? You have a really short leash at first until you can be trusted. And then the leash gets longer and longer and longer. And the longer the leash, the more runway you have to build really, really cool projects. But until you have that leash and stakeholder buy-in, focus on small wins. You can do them in parallel, but make sure that you're constantly getting small wins out. And then obviously the standard things, right? Productionize models, assess those values, and scale those solutions successfully. So you take a step back outside of a tech framework and more towards a business framework, right? Tying initiatives to business goals and priorities, demonstrating ROI, piloting projects, you can gain buy-in from stakeholders, and that's how you win. And then in regards to this full potential, right? The way that I look at data-driven transformation, culture change, success within an organization is people need training. People need workshops. I can nearly guarantee if you put one together of your own volition on generative AI or people internally, you get 20, 50, 500 people to show up. People want to know this stuff. They're excited about it. They have no idea what the hell it does. Second, I've mentioned it a lot of times. I've mentioned it a lot of times because it's so important. How does AI support business goals? How does it support organizational goals? Get leadership buy-in, critically important. You have that, you have budget, you have bandwidth. Start small on those projects. Identify the right hardware and software stack that you need to solve the use cases and the ones you can solve today with what you currently have. And then thinking about what you need in the future, right? To scale this effectively. The other piece too is talent, right? A lot of people haven't worked with NLP, haven't worked with LLMs before. So are you the person that really leans into and learns generative AI? Are you helping to bring in new talent that has expertise in that? Or to just get that leadership buy-in and prove success, are you bringing in external consultants? There's no wrong answer for that, but you need to make sure that you have the right team to enact this. And then building an AI culture, right? I think organizations today are going to have to continue to be hyper adaptable to be successful. Technology is going to change dramatically every 18 months for the next 20 years. And so the need for companies to not be okay with the status quo is critically important. And 7 is driven completely by 1, right? To educate the organization. It's okay to fail. It's optimal to experiment. And there's a necessity to continuously learn. That generates success for the org. And then lastly, ROI, right? Talk in dollars. It will revolutionize your career. It will change the way business sees data science and AI. If you can talk about the return on investment, if you can talk about cost savings, you can talk about revenue produced, it is a game changer. And with that, thank you all very much.